Good Monday morning. Um, the subject that I'd like to discuss today is the accumulation of wealth um, and how it has driven the development of civilization. Um, Everybody has heard and is familiar with the expression, uh, it takes money to make money. And also the golden rule, he who has the gold rules. Um, well, these are expressions that define, in a way, the development of civilization and basically the nature of most societies that have existed after the uh, development of civilization, when humanity moved from small tribal organizations into larger cities and city states. Um, the expression "the rich get richer and the poor stay poor" also helps define this process. Um, Here in the United States today, in our what we call a capitalist economy, uh, it is as true as it is anywhere else that it takes money to make money, and uh, he who has the gold rules. Uh, and this process, if everything begins equal, like it does in a monopoly game, for instance, everybody's issued the same amount of money, then after the game goes on for a little while, one player starts to accumulate more money than the other players, uses that money to invest wisely in properties, and at some point, those property investments put him or her at great advantage, and all of the money flows into his account, and everyone else playing becomes pauperized. Well, uh, this could easily define the nature of our society. A good example is, I think, that the transgenerational or intergenerational wealth uh, for instance, Caucasian Americans is 12 times greater than the intergenerational wealth in African Americans. So basically, if you're born a Caucasian American, moi, um, you start off with more money in the bank in the game of life, or in the real life game of Monopoly, than those players with less money in the bank. Therefore, you can begin your investing much earlier than those other players. And as I just mentioned, in this real life game of Monopoly, you come out way ahead of those that started far behind you. It's kind of like if you're running a 100-yard dash and you start on the 50-yard line and somebody starts 70 yards behind you. Even if you're much slower than they are, you're going to win, because they're having to run 120 yards while you're running 50 yards. Well, this intergenerational wealth allows money or property to accumulate in certain families. And as it accumulates, it is able to be used to accumulate more wealth. So what happens over time is that an aristocracy develops. Everybody's familiar with this. It's why people strive to go to certain universities. It's not because they're going to get a better education at those universities. It's because they're going to mingle with people that can also afford to go to those universities, and therefore associate with these folks and generally choose a mate from that rather elite group of individuals who have money. So the money from one family marries into the money of another family, and the children and grandchildren therefore inherit this combined wealth and are able to, if they don't get off into drugs or if they have average intelligence, are able to accumulate more wealth, and the process goes on until you have a society where you have an aristocracy and a working class. And once this has occurred, then because of the nature of capitalism, it just continues to perpetuate itself until some major cataclysm occurs. Let's call it a war, or some massive natural disaster that shakes the table and allows things to resort. In our current society, it seems to me that we have gotten to the point where most folks, most Americans, when they die, they're pretty close to broke. That's because of inflation, so that if you were frugal and saved a lot over the course of your life, and owned your home, for instance, toward the end of your life, you got sick, because that's what happens. People tend to get older and then get sicker, and eventually, of course, die. Well, because of the capitalistic nature of the practice of medicine here, when you get sicker, you use more, you require more medical care. And because of the nature of Medicare, you generate more medical expenses. And because for most people you have a copay of 20%, and because of the cost of medicine, when you, let's say, require a month in an ICU and generate $250,000 in medical expenses, Medicare pays for most of it, but you still owe $50,000. Well, there went the equity in your home, for instance. Of course, if you have enough money, you pay the $50,000 and go ahead and die, and then your heirs get what's left behind. If you're very wealthy, or if you're, for instance, like me, not very wealthy, but somewhat wealthy, you realize that at 65, you can, within 3 months of the birth month, your 65th birth month, 3 months before, 3 months after, you have opportunity to buy supplemental insurance, which is somewhat expensive, but that Plan F, as it's called, allows you to pay no deductible, no copay, and have no maximum on your medical expenses. So by buying Plan F, you protect your estate from these massive medical expenses, and you're able to then pass on wealth to your heirs, which other people that didn't have Plan F couldn't afford it, didn't know about it, lose to the medical system, the hospitals and the pharmaceutical companies and the physicians, etc. This process allows people to rise above the poverty that frequently occurs at death. Of course, the person doesn't experience the poverty because they're dead. But the family experience the poverty because there is little to no estate left to pass on to the next generation. This system, if you just follow it through the generations, allows wealth to accumulate in certain families that use that wealth to build gated communities and establish trust funds and things such as that, that separates them from the madding crowd. As I have explained in an earlier chat, money is what is used to run political campaigns. Generally, people support politicians that help them financially, whose policies help the person that's giving money, donating money to a campaign. So people with little money have little effect. I mean, they can, if they gave 1/10 of their income to some particular political campaign, it would have little effect because not much money could be, much of their money could be used to buy political advertising on broadcast media. So, and since that is the main driving force that generates votes, people with little money have little power, whereas people with more money have more power. And since people tend to vote for what is in their own financial best interest in the short term, the people with the most money win the elections, and the people with the most money have the most effect on those elections. Eventually, historically, the group of powerful people with a lot of money band together and move from an aristocracy or an oligarchy into a more totalitarian state where the power is vested, the power over the entire society is vested in an individual or a few individuals. This results in either a dictatorship or a monarchy. So the social progression is from a more egalitarian or society where there's a greater sharing of the wealth, a greater equality among the members of that society toward a division of wealth into the haves and the have-nots. There's a great song that Judy Collins sang called Marat Sade. It's from a play by Peter Weiss. I think that's a guy's name. Marat Sade talks about Jean-Paul Marat and the Marquis de Sade and juxtaposes those two individuals. But in there, the people sing in this play and in this particular song, Marat, we're poor, and the poor stay poor. It's talking about the French Revolution. But somewhere, maybe in the Bible, it says the poor are always with us. Well, in some countries, they're a lot more. The percentage of the poor is much larger than in other countries. So in those countries, I guess the poor is always with them. And we seem to be, as a society, headed in that direction. When I was a child, and growing up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, not too far from the levee on the Mississippi, I rode my bicycle. Me and my buds rode our bicycles up onto the levee, and we actually found a real hobo, a homeless person. It was an anomaly. None of us had ever seen a hobo, a homeless person. We'd read about them. We'd heard about them back in the Depression. We'd heard about tent cities and hobo camps, but we'd never seen one. It was amazing to talk to this person that didn't have a home to live in, didn't have shelter, lived by a campfire in a pup tent out behind the levee. Today, homelessness in this wealthy nation is a fairly common occurrence. But except for those with extreme mental illness and substance use problems, the vast majority of homeless people did not come from that segment of the population that had inherited significant wealth. They generally come from poverty themselves or lower middle class positions, and as a result of their lifelong lack of money, they have ended up homeless. Maybe they grew up in a city like San Jose or Los Angeles where their family had a little house and or at least rented a fairly substantial little place, but the cost of rent and home values slowly rose and exceeded their ability to afford shelter. Well, that's inflation. part of the process that perpetuates poverty. More on this subject later.